Wild swings in the stock market are fueling concerns over a potential new economic slowdown. The Dow plunged more than 550 points on Friday. It was partly a response to rising trade tensions between the U.S. and China after the arrest of the CFO of the Chinese tech company Huawei. It's been a decade since the last major economic slowdown. About 8.7 million Americans lost their jobs, and some of the world's biggest banks collapsed. Alex Wagner spoke to some of the key players in the 2008 financial crisis. Alex, good morning.
Good morning. We met up with former Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke and former Treasury Secretaries Hank Paulson, and Timothy Geithner at Delmonico's restaurant in New York's financial district, which is, of course, the epicenter of the 2008 financial crisis. We discussed their HBO documentary, U.S.-China relation, and today's economy. I bet you're sleeping a lot better these days, though.
Yeah, well, that's a low bar to get over.
They're nicknamed the Three Amigos, the men who worked behind closed doors to stave off another Great Depression. But 10 years since the Great Recession, they address the personal toll the 2008 financial crisis had on them.
I felt very, very alone and very, very disconsolate. We really felt like we were kind of out on an island there.
Just having that crushing sense of responsibility and fear.
The scariest times for me were never during the day. We were too busy, right? We were talking to each other. We were working. It'd be waking up in the middle of the night.
You had nightmares.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Their new HBO documentary delves into what really happened during the financial market meltdown.
We were a few days away from the ATMs not working.
It was a crisis caused by irresponsible mortgage lending and a subsequent bubble burst in the housing market.
Tim worked in the Treasury on the Asia crisis. Hank was in markets for many years. I was, as an academic, I had worked on the Great Depression. And so in a way, we were prepared, and that was fortuitous, and we were complementary to each other. But I have to say, it's not something that, you may train for war, but you don't necessarily want to be in combat.
I didn't feel particularly prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had this the constant, relentless experience over and over again of facing something that was existential in its effects on people's lives without being completely confident
that you were going to be able to fix it.
That we were going to be able to fix it.
While some credit them from saving the country from a worst-case scenario, there are those that felt the decision to save the too-big-to-fail banks came at the expense of the average American.
The fact that the American public hates what we did is not surprising, because in many ways it's un-American.
The things that were deeply unpopular and seemed deeply unfair were the necessary, essential thing to prevent damage. It would have been dramatically worse for the economy if we had indulged the natural instinct of people, which is to let the thing burn.
The thesis of this project, this documentary, is that the after effects of the financial crisis led to a rise in populism. Was the financial crisis a tipping point for American populism?
Financial crises do tend to lead to populist reactions sometimes, and this didn't help, obviously. We had a crisis, we had a Great Recession. But we've had structural issues in the United States for many, many years, at least 30 or 40 years, increasing inequality, declining ability for people to get ahead.
It's an inequality that still persists. Black home ownership in America now stands at levels not seen since the segregation era. Is the idea that you live the American dream and you get to buy a house, has that gone?
No, I don't think it's gone. I think that it was exaggerated. I mean, one of the reasons that subprime lending got so popular, it was because it was expanding the American dream, and that turned out to be a mistake. And the truth is that, home ownership is important, but it isn't the only way to build wealth. It isn't the only way to have a stable community. There's this sort of idea that buying a home is the thing that every family should do. Some families don't need to buy a home. Some families, are better off with rental or other kinds of arrangements.
Do you think the president and his policies are strengthening and making the American economy more resilient? I mean, we are in a trade war with China. Populism is fierce. Does that concern you?
I would say gravely, yeah. No country can be stronger than its political system, and the political system of the United States today has lost the capacity to govern.
I'm, for one, am relatively optimistic that what you're going to see is the Trump administration and China on tactical issues come to an agreement, end the tariff war.
End the tariff war.
End the tariff war. But even when that happens, There are going to be significant structural issues, and this is going to be a very difficult relationship between the U.S. and China for some time. And that, I don't attribute that to the Trump administration. There's nothing that unites Democrats and Republicans today like anti-China rhetoric and sentiment. We need to find common ground with China for a global economic system to work, for us to have peace, prosperity, stability. We don't need another Cold War.
Are you confident that if the next financial crisis was on our America's doorstep, that this president and this Congress could handle it?
I don't think we have a system in place to deal with a crisis once it happens. We have a lot of things that make a crisis less likely. So the fire is less likely to occur, but if it does occur, I think we have fewer fire hoses than we had even in 10 years ago.
All three men say they hope the new documentary helps people better understand what went wrong and the decision-making inside the Obama and Bush White Houses. Panic, the untold story of the 2008 financial crisis, airs tonight on HBO. It's fascinating.
Yeah, really good
What a great
conversation. Good
trifecta,
interview.
Alex.
And
Yeah.
you get a sense of the real humanity behind what was going on.
All right, Alex, thanks so much.